o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening. This is Andy Stack, Chair of the CA Board of Directors. Please remember that our meeting is being live streamed. I encourage you to follow along using documents that are posted at the CA Board website. I remind everyone to please mute your mics and phone unless you're speaking. Please be courteous to each other. When you speak, try to remember to state your first name so everyone knows who is speaking, and speak clearly and slowly so that everyone can hear you. And I encourage the board members to use the chat room when you want to be recognized for discussion and questions. I will introduce each item on the agenda. Voting will be by roll call unless it's unanimous. I will try to restate the motion before the vote is actually taken. And so now what I'd like to do is officially call the roll for our board members. Janet?
Here.
Shari?
Here.
Ginny?
Here.
Dick?
Present.
Lynn?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
Jess?
Here.
Alan?
Mostly here.
Renee? I know I saw Renee somewhere.
Yeah, Renee was on earlier. She's
Yeah.
around someplace.
And Milton?
Here.
All right, thank you all. Announcements of closed special meetings. There was a closed CA Board of Directors work session on 30th of July. In attendance, Dick, Renee, Jess, Alan, Milton, Nancy, Ginny, Shari, Andy, and then Janet joined us at 5:34. The vote to close was 8-0-0. It was closed under section 4. Consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Meeting was closed at 5:31 p.m., opened at 6:40 p.m., and the purpose was to discuss a legal issue. There was a closed CA Board of Directors work session on September 7th. From the board, we had Dick, Renee, Jess, Lynn, Janet, Alan, Nancy, Ginny, Shari, and Andy. The vote to close was 10-0-0. It was closed under section 1, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel. The meeting started at 9:03 a.m., ended at 11:08 a.m. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss some personnel issues. There was a closed meeting of the audit committee on September 21st. Jim, Timothy, Dick, Renee, and Janet were present. The vote to close was 5-0-0. It was closed under 1 and 4, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Meeting was closed at 7:48 p.m., opened at 9:01 p.m. Purpose was to review audit reports and consultation with staff personnel on legal matters. And finally, there was a closed CA Board of Directors meeting on September 22nd. In attendance was Renee, Jess, Janet, Alan, Nancy, Ginny, Shari, Andy. The vote to close was 8-0-0. It was closed under section 6, consideration of the terms or conditions of a business transaction. In the negotiation stage, the disclosure could adversely affect the economic interests of the homeowners association. It was closed. Meeting was closed at 6:33 p.m., opened at 6:54 p.m., and the purpose was to consider a business transaction. That is all the closed special meetings I have to announce. So move on. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Shari moved. Oh,
I just have a point of information. I would like to respond to agenda item number 4.
okay. I mean,
Do we have a second on the
well, okay.
agenda?
Shari moved.
I'll
Was
second
there a
the,
second?
I'll second the agenda.
Denny seconded. The second. Okay, Shari.
Yeah, I would just like to ask if there has been any follow-up regarding resident speak out to the July 23rd meeting that we had about how to work with IT on opening up resident speak out.
I thought that's 7B tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, all right, if you're going to I assume that there's some information from IT that's going to be examined. I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Maybe I just forgot it. All right, I'm fine with that then if we're gonna
All right.
address it in 7.
Is there any objection to the approval of the agenda?
I'll object for the
Okay.
reason that not allowing people to attend.
Any other objection? Otherwise, I'll mark you all as yes. Okay, so it'll be 9-1, Alan. All right. We do not have anyone signed up for resident speak out tonight.
Andy,
Yes, Milton.
if there's no one for resident speak out, may I have our new chief marketing officer, Tim Pennell, and our new senior manager of media and communications, Danica Rhines out there. I believe both of them are out there someplace. I'd like to introduce both of them to the board.
Sure, sounds good.
I didn't want to ask them to stay around for the entire meeting in case they wanted to, so I'd like to just introduce them now. So, Tim.
Milton, I'm not sure if Tim, because he actually mentioned to me specifically he had some kid obligations tonight. So there is possible he did not
Okay.
receive the notice from Janet quite in time.
He received it, but this is Danica. Please, Danica, just briefly introduce yourself.
Sure.
Welcome, Danica.
Hi, thanks. My name is Danica Rhines. My husband and I recently moved, actually in the midst of the pandemic start, right in mid-March. We moved from Madison, Wisconsin out here. I'm a Carroll County native. My background is in broadcast news. So I've spent the last 10 years as a reporter, anchor, producer, you name it. So that's kind of my wheelhouse right there. But I've been brought on to fill some big shoes, I should say, of David Greisman. And I'm so happy to be here. I am certainly aware my parents are Oakland Mills alum, high school sweethearts. And so Columbia is near and dear to my heart. And so this endeavor has been really exciting and I'm learning a lot. People are being very patient with me as I continue to learn more and more about this organization. And, I just wanted to make sure you all knew that we are certainly here for any of your needs and any way I can help, or if anything comes up, please let Milton know and he'll certainly pass it along to me.
Any comments from the board?
Welcome.
Very happy to have you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
We've needed you.
Well, that's very sweet. I'm not sure. Hopefully I will live up to the great things that David was able to do here and hopefully help a little bit with everything going on and communicating that.
Well, Andy,
Yes, Jenny?
I just also want to welcome you. We really are excited about you coming on board. And I think one of the things we're looking for is that we be responsive in terms of communicating to the residents about any change in a timely fashion and accurately. That is just so crucial. no matter what it is, whether it's good news or bad news, and something the board can then help distribute. So that's really, really important to us.
I used to be on the other side of bugging people for that information, so I understand the urgency, I understand the importance, and I'm happy to bring that experience hopefully to the board and help facilitate that kind of communication.
Thank you, Danica.
Sure
Thanks,
thing.
We'll try to get Tim for the work session if he can't make it tonight.
Yes.
All right, move on. Consent agenda. We approve the minutes and we approve the easement request. So we're on to the board votes topics. So the first one is parameters for operating capital budget. Milton, would you like to say anything?
Well, Susan will bring it up because if you notice this one, we have revised it, and so we'll like to, Susan will bring it up on her screen and we can walk you through it and address any questions you have before you take action on it.
Okay. Susan?
Okay, so, here we go. You should be able to see the memo. So what we did, and it's obviously your decision, but at the work session on September 10, we had presented two options or alternatives for the operating budget parameter, and it seemed like that was perhaps overcomplicating your decision. And so what we did to just kind of simplify things, we thought, and it seems that you were also leaning towards a more conservative. And so we actually just sort of stepped back and said, you know what, we would stand by our first recommendation, our first alternative, to just set the operating parameter, so the bottom line, increase in net assets, at what we budgeted in FY21, $35,000. And that basically is to just to draw a line in the sand that we would have a positive bottom line. So other than that, I didn't change any of the backup materials. We're not changing our recommendation for a capital budget, and nor the rationale for either one. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Questions for Susan? Please remember to use the chat. I'm hearing no question. Susan, I'll put a question in. If we say, like we set maybe the bottom line at 250,000, would that give us, I'll say maybe a little bit of cushion in case some unexplained thing happens?
It would. I think we would respond in the same way, regardless. We would make sure that if there was some unanticipated beyond a pandemic and recession, we would then manage operations and expenses to overcome that. But if that would make you feel, if the board would be more comfortable with that, that's certainly reasonable.
Andy.
Okay, Milton, yes.
Andy, if you can help me, and maybe Susan better understands it. When you said put it in, okay, we're talking about just put in a number to project our net increase in our assets at the end of the fiscal year. You said $250,000. Okay, that can be a target, but you threw me off when you said in case there's something that we need it for or something. I don't understand that part.
What I was thinking, Milton, is if you set the parameter like 250,000, we work toward that, and suddenly there is a very unexpected activity or something that occurs that we may not be able to actually meet, simply by reducing expenses. We still have like a little cushion of 250, so we don't end up going negative. That's kind of where I was thinking, but that's for the board and other people. Ginny, you're next.
I'm sorry, when we get to the capital budget, I know what it says now in terms of 8 million, safety, et cetera, but I think it would be good is when we present it to somehow explain to the residents what has been cut. Put it in the budget, that when it was 15,000 and included X, Y, and Z, it's now 15 million. It's now 8 million, and it's really only for safety and emergency repairs. So they'll know what's not being done as much as what might be done.
That's
Just
Okay, let's have a staff recommendation is operating parameter of $35,000 for net assets. Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure,
And
Shar.
I think the question from Sharp, yeah.
So, basically, from my reading right now, is that all economic indicators are down. And that's certainly true, not just for CA, but across the board. And Columbia is not separate from the rest of the country. And so this question of assuring $35,000 increase in net assets during COVID, it's a very uneasy type of statement. How can we do that? Hopefully we will have reserves that we're setting aside. We will have short-term borrowing. We are trying to, set up something that will take into account various Plan Bs or Plan C that we might have to move to. But why say a $35,000 increase during this time when so many companies are going out of business, so many people are experiencing such terrible economic times?
So what this is the bottom line. So what we would be saying, what we say by this $35,000 increase in net assets, we're saying that we want to finish FY22, finish the year with total income being greater than total expenses by $35,000. So we don't want to operate in the red. That's basically what this is saying. So it's we're not speaking as if we are increasing our results over a prior period. This is just saying we don't want to operate in the red, and we're going to do all that we can not to. So I'm not sure, and that's what we have budgeted for FY21. We believe we'll do that. Maybe you can help me understand better your concern.
Well, I think if you can explain where that 35,000 came from.
So it's so when we did the operating budget for FY2021 in June, we budgeted for revenue of about $55 million and expenses of essentially 55, just a little bit different. And the difference is $35,000. So I can maybe it would help me to bring up the financial statements for the quarter.
I think given the uncertainty of the times, and I understand we've always done this in the past with a 2-year window. Here we're looking at a 1-year window, but maybe we should be looking at this with a quarterly window to be able to have more flexibility, number one. And number two, I think it would be terrific if we could break even.
What?
I think when we're talking about the current circumstances, I'm just afraid that we're setting ourselves up for something we're promising more than we can deliver.
Andy, if I may, Susan,
Sure.
if you could pull up, if you have the our financial statements, the statement of financial position on is page 2, where it would just show our yes, it would just show from 2019 to 2020 what a total increase in our net assets, and so we can probably better explain to the board how that impacts, because I think Shari's talking about an increase in our cash position, or increase in our financial asset, but that's not what the case is. Yes, if you go
Right.
down.
These numbers are very different because this is the first quarter of 20, right, this is July 31, 2020, so this is FY 21. But so what we're talking about, we're saying we're targeting to have the revenue, total revenue, exceed total expenses by $55,000 for the whole year. This is, so please, disregard this. This is very, very large because it's the first quarter. Let me see if I can pull up the budget also so you can see. So, I think that, first of all, the quarterly idea, you're going to review it quarterly and you can make adjustments to the budget throughout the year, but we need to set an annual target. We have some requirements outside of CA that we have to provide an annual budget. So that has to be done. But, this is what we're talking about, Sherry. Just that the revenue would exceed expenses by $35,000. So if we're thinking we're going to have $55 million in expenses, in revenue, we should be able to carve out $35,000 of expenses and not spend it. So that's really what we're trying to do.
Dick is next.
Yes, Annie, you're talking about putting $250,000 in there, and I think Shari's looking at putting some more of a safety cushion in there. I like keeping it at $35,000 because it's going to keep our feet to the fire. It doesn't give us a slush fund. It just says we gotta make sure we have our expenditures aren't greater than our revenues. And as we go through the year, we can make adjustments. We can find ways to, if we have more revenues coming in, we can probably increase our expenditures. And if we run short on revenues, we can cut back on expenditures. But I don't want to put a huge slush fund in there that gives us the illusion that we are doing better than we really are.
Renee? And then Alan?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with Shari that we should be looking, you guys can vote either way on the net increase in net assets, but I think she made an important comment about us looking at the budget at least quarterly, and amending it, because right now our budget is completely out of whack with the opening of the gyms a quarter early. And I think it would do us a world of good to go back to the current year and adjust the budget to reflect that, rather than having the numbers so far out of whack.
Alan? Oh,
Yeah,
excuse
I
me.
guess one person's slush fund is another person's safety net. What percentage of our total revenue is 35,000 projected total revenue?
Pretty close to zero, Alan.
Well, that was sort of my point. I think, why not make it $1? I mean, 35, even 250,000 is a pretty small percentage of our overall budget. Either number feels like a complete guess to me, and might as well be zero, or just $1, or just say that we have an intent to ensure that we don't spend more than we take in. I don't see spending any more time quibbling about that number.
Okay. Lynn?
Lynn, you're muted.
I finally got it. Yeah, no, I agree. It's an insignificant number, but it's just enough to actually matter. It could be a part of a program, a part of a something, but it keeps us watching and watching carefully. I think it's a reasonable thing to do.
Ginny?
Susan, are there or are there not some requirements by our funders that we have a net asset column? I mean, I would think there would be.
So we have covenants to meet on our debt. Yes. So, we wouldn't manage to that. So we have to make sure that we meet those covenants, right?
Yeah. So we can't keep it at a zero or anything. It has to be something that has, for some reason, we've reached this educated guess. But you're right, every 3 months, we will be reevaluating everything. It could go up, it could go down. But we have to have something there, correct?
That's correct.
And in your best judgment and your staff, you're saying you've decided 35,000 would be that figure.
Yes, I mean, that's what we budgeted for that this year. We are confident that we can achieve it, or that we will achieve it. It's really, to Alan's point, every year it's really a guess. It's just a little bit more educated in most years than it is this time. But, it's a target, and it just gives us something to aim at where we know we would meet our goals.
Yes, it's simply a target, and it just basis tells us that we cannot, at the minimum, go below that, but we can always come out higher than that.
Alan?
Yeah, was 35,000 the target you had, and then you built a budget to hit that target, or was 35,000 just the number that came out after you built the budget?
So we built the budget to get to zero. We were making sure that we would not go below that. And then that was what I set a little minimum balance there that we had to get at least, I said $30,000 to $40,000 above zero.
Okay. And I'd like to hear your staff response to the notion, what are the pros and cons of taking it to 250,000?
I thought I already did that, but
I may have missed it, sorry.
yeah, when Andy first brought that up, I understood what he was saying, that he means his intention was that it just gives us a little flexibility. Maybe we don't have to go, so drastic to keep a balanced budget, to make sure that the revenue or the income exceeds expenses if there's a greater margin in the target. So that I think that's a benign suggestion. I would be okay with that either.
Wouldn't we have to make more drastic cuts if we wanted to keep a margin of 250,000?
Yeah, probably so. Mm-hmm.
It'd be more drastic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept staff's recommendation, having net assets at 35K?
So moved.
Dick moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Lynn seconded. All right. Is there any objection? All right, so I'll take a roll vote. Janet?
Yes.
Shari?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Renee?
No.
Andy? Yes. Okay, it passes. Let's go on then to the capital budget. Susan, recommendation from staff?
Yes, so we set this target of $8 million, again, based on cash flow like we did for FY21. I wanted to make it clear that everyone understands that that's not adequate for the level of, or the vast amount and array of physical assets that CA has over the long term. But this is what we're comfortable being able to fund, and we feel that we can take care of the safety and minimum quality requirements that we have with this $8 million benchmark. Again, this would be something I would not expect to have, at some point we need to return to what our annual benchmark was of 15 million. The indications that I see is that it's unlikely that would be before 2024 and may go out much longer than that. But this is what we feel we could accomplish both from a cash flow standpoint and would meet our minimum needs.
Okay, any questions? All right, is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendation of a capital budget of $8 million for fiscal year 22?
So moved.
Ginny, is there a second?
I'll second.
Jess? Is there any objection? Nope, all right, unanimous. Okay, next we're moving on to the annual charge rate and cap. Milton, anything you wanna?
Now, Susan, are you going to share this one? And because this one did not change from the work session.
That's correct. But I brought it up on my screen anyway.
Well, do you want a motion, Andy?
Okay, staff's recommendation is to basically keep the annual charge rate and cap the same as it is for fiscal year 21, which is 68 cents per $100 assessed valuation and 3.5%, correct?
That's correct.
All right, is there a motion to accept that?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Lynn seconded. All right. So is there any discussion?
Yeah,
Alan.
I'd like, oops, sorry.
Yeah,
Alan,
In-
and then,
in the memo, you talk about a 1 cent reduction representing a 1.5% decrease. Can I assume that a 1 cent addition would also represent a 1.5% increase and about $16 a year per
Yes.
household?
Yes.
Okay. $16 a year feels like even more chump change than 35,000 for us. It's what again, I know you said it before, the overall, if we added a penny to the rate, what would be it'd be $16 per household? How much would that theoretically net us?
550,000.
$642,000.
Oh, it's gone up.
That feels like a worthwhile thing to do to me.
okay, Nancy and then Shari.
I've been saying this for a couple of years now, that extra penny or two would make a big difference. Except right now, I'm beginning to believe, and I mean, this is a real tough decision, frankly. The bigger decision for me is about the cost of the facilities for memberships. And I think that I'm hearing, and I think others may be hearing, from the public saying that they don't want the annual charge paying for the facilities. This is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, especially with the pools being closed and people paying a little closer attention to CA. So I think that this is something that we really do need to think about before we make a final decision.
Shari?
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Nancy has said. I've certainly been hearing the same thing from the public. I think it was a big wake-up call for people when the outdoor pools were completely closed this year. You know, the rate, the 68 cents, has not changed since 2004.
Right.
I mean, I can't think of anything that has not changed over that period. This is, you know, this is one of the very, very tough things that we have to look at. But in some ways, previous boards have kind of kicked the can down the road. And now, because of COVID and other circumstances, we're kind of in this make it or break it, tough space. From what I've heard from members of the village boards, they would certainly be willing to pay that extra penny in order to make sure that the community pools were open. And one of the things that we could think about doing with this 600,000 is setting it aside in a lockbox to make sure that those pools are able to open. I think
Yes.
that would be a great community benefit, and I think we would have enormous support for doing that.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, Dick is next and then Lynn. And I see,
When you're talking about inflation, since the annual charge is based on the property value um, of the properties, which are increasing in value, our annual assessment does rise with inflation. So let's just, make sure we know that. My concern is this is less of an economic question than a public relations question. And this is a very difficult time. And we have really pissed off a lot of people over the past year. And our reputation is pretty well shot. And I think adding to the assessment when we're reducing services is just going to get an enormous amount of blowback. I don't think we can afford to reduce the assessment because we need the money. And so at a time when there's just so much conflict going on, it seems to me that the safest way to handle this is to stick with what we've done in the past. And then when the economy improves and we get all our services back online, then we can reanalyze just how much we want to raise our rates. But right now, it'd just be such a nightmare if we were to raise our rates. Even though we have a new communications person on board, I just don't want to go there.
okay, Lynn is next.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you, Dick. What I'm worried about, though, again, just even looking at this, we have 940,000 for Brookfield properties. Again, what are we going to have when the mall opens or doesn't? And will it ever be the mall that we knew? Probably not. What's going to happen to all these small businesses in these commercial parks, all around Columbia? How many will come out? What kind of abatements will we be asked to see? How confident are we, Susan, in those numbers? I know it's early. What are we basing?
Yeah, so we reduced the annual charge budget significantly in that very expectation. I mean, I think we had I know I've said this before, but there was we processed $101,000 in abatement refunds just already this season, and that was for prior years for 2 properties. So, and I think you're right. I don't really even want to discuss it in person, but I think that we have a tremendous risk on that commercial side.
Yeah, and again, coupled with that, I think we're going to talk about what we think as a board is important. What are our core values? What are our core obligations to the community? And again, I agree with Sherry. The pools, the outdoor pools, that's essential. So hopefully, whatever we do, we can get those open again as long as COVID will let us, in full for next year, and maybe think about expanding the hours on them at some point, taking them past the middle of August, making them even more valuable to the community.
Janet and then Jess.
Yeah, so my one point wanted to make was the same as Dick's, and that is about the property values going up, so therefore our assessments go up, except for maybe commercial. But I agree that optically, I think during a very difficult time, while we would have some support in the community, I'm concerned about raising the valuation. I would rather see us raise membership rates because that's something that's funding something that people are choosing to be a part of, as opposed to, just because they live on Columbia assessed land. We don't want to make Columbia less desirable by, charging people more just because they're on the land. I would rather try to find a way to charge more for the services that are valuable to people at a rate that they're willing to pay.
Jess and then Alan.
I agree with what Dick and Janet are saying. I would love to be able to raise the assessment rate so we can have more money, but I think it's terrible timing. And I think that, it would not serve us well. What I think may be more realistic is to start having an open dialogue with the community because this is a 1-year budget we're looking at, and start to sort of say, look, we know we're going to have to answer a lot of tough questions. We know we're going to have to really consider services and try to somehow poll the community about what is important to them and basically how much they're willing to pay for those services. And if the outdoor pools are what people want, then we need to make it clear this is how much it costs to run them. And, if you guys want them, they have to be paid for somehow. So that was sort of my comment. And as I wrote in the chat box, as I recall, I think to me, the reason why I'm opposed to any change is that $641,000 is a drop in the bucket and isn't going to really give us enough money to do anything other than maybe open like 2 pools. And so I think the optics overruled that, in my opinion. So.
Alan and then Ginny.
Yeah, I could see not raising it this year as long as we state an intention that be part of what we're going to talk about and work with the community for this year. If we just wait another year, and then we're going to have this is what we've done. And Nancy's talked about, I've been saying this the only time she says it, I'm not faulting Nancy for this because she actually has said it other times, but we discuss it when we're about to make the decision of what to set the rate at. We don't discuss it as part of any planful, thoughtful future, and it never serves us well. I don't know that I would see 640,000 as a drop in the bucket, but I absolutely do get the question of the optics. It's an issue, and I'm not denying that whatsoever. I would like, and then Susan, I'm sorry that I'm probably asking you questions that you've already given us answers to, but ballpark, big figures. Are we reducing services, and what services are we reducing that are paid out of the annual charge?
So because we don't separate the sources of funding and pay bills out of one pot versus the other, it's all commingled. But certainly we are, from the perspective of outdoor pools are paid for by the annual charge, so that was reduced this summer. Camps.
This summer, we're talking about next summer.
Oh, we haven't built that budget yet, so I can.
This budget, there were okay, but as you think about the money that you have, you haven't thought about. You're asking us to set I guess maybe this goes back to the other thing I've said every year when we do this. We're asked to set a limit without knowing what the needs are yet, which seems like a backwards way to build a budget to me.
I know. I've heard that before, but I disagree. So you have to set a target, and we figure out what the revenue will be. That's what you're doing here. Is you're saying how much revenue from the annual charge will you collect, and then you guys are going to have to decide how that's spent, and what we do. So speaking from currently, and I would not expect the total revenue to be higher than the 56 million that we have budgeted this year. Certainly, there would be things that were funded by the annual charge in the past that we're not doing this year, and it's likely that you wouldn't do next year. So I can only say right now, things like outdoor pools, camps, the art center, limited operations.
Give or take what percentage, I don't need an exact number, but give or take what percentage of the expenses of camps and the art center are made up by income that comes in for those programs?
For the art center, just about zero, very, very little. For camps,
Roughly, ballpark.
yeah, camps, they lost $800,000 last year and did over the past several years. So I don't know, so that's an annual charge subsidy. I don't know what percent that is. I don't have that handy.
But 800,000 out of 8 million or 800,000 out of 900,000? I mean,
Hold on a second.
ballpark. Okay. I guess I hear, Susan, around your rationale for doing it this way. To me, this opens us up to have too many surprises. If we knew, for example, that having an extra 641,000 would enable us to do something major that we all wanted to do, I think we'd all be much more willing to say, let's include it. Or if we said we don't need that extra 641,000, let's reduce the charge by a penny. It's, I guess part of what it is, I think we ought to have some point in here where as we're building the budget, we come back to this question of what the charge should be so that we can make a decision. Are we at a point where we think it's worth raising it or reducing it? But setting it and forgetting it now is not the way to go. Susan?
Yeah, so I disagree. I think it
hear you.
absolutely is the way to go. And we could get into that again, but the $642,000 is 1.1% of the total budgeted revenue for FY21. So as far as how much of meaningful that would be, you'd have to decide that. So let's see. So camps funds a little less than half of their expenses.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, Ginny and then Lynn.
And Andy, I'd like to get in the queue.
Sure.
I think I'm in there too.
I got a whole list.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, sometimes what I see in the chat are comments, and I don't know whether you want to actually ask a question or whether you just are chatting.
No, I have.
Right, you, Dick, I've seen, but Ginny.
Hi. Okay, a couple of comments. I'm also hearing from people that they feel they're paying too much to CA. I think somebody made this point before that property assessments are going up in the county, in the state, and in what CA thus is benefiting from that. So while we're talking about let's raise it a penny or 2 pennies, other people are looking at, you've already done that to me because I'm paying more than I paid in the past. So they don't understand what you're saying at all. They think you've already done it to them. Second point is we're talking about going from a $40 million budget that closed the pools to a 55, 56 million potential budget. That is a gamble, I agree. No, am I wrong, Susan?
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean, the
That's
FY20.
wrong. That's incorrect.
What?
You are wrong.
Okay, correct me.
Okay, so the original 21 budget was almost $80 million in revenue. Now it is 56 million in revenue. So that's
Okay, it's gone up to 56 now. Okay.
No,
First was the annual chart.
that's just the annual charge portion.
Okay. What I'm getting at is that we don't know what the FY 2022 budget is at this point because we have not set the parameters to give Susan the ammunition that she and her staff need to intelligently try and assess or estimate how much revenue will be coming in. So you can't expect Susan to be doing expenditures before she's gotten at least a ballpark figure on revenue. That's just makes sense, and that's what our job is tonight. We also have some things that we must pay for, and I believe what has been agreed upon is that we will be getting a list of those so that we can share them with the community that are absolutely we must pay. We have no choice at all. One of them that we may want to take, just to give you an idea, you can think of the usual things like rent, utilities, but take a look at the subsidies for income qualified. Now, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I think in 2019, it was maybe 641,000 or close to that. Okay, I don't know what it'll be this year, but that's a value thing. That's something that CA, if we choose to continue that in the budget, that's a given. That will cost you X number of dollars. So you've got to be thinking of things like that you are going to pay for, and that money will not be available for other things that you want. Child care, we are now subsidizing that, where the county is using the CARES money to subsidize theirs, and we're trying to get them to help us, but it was a profit center. It is no longer a profit center. That's sad. We've lost that, and I hope we can regain that, but that's important. The pools, we need to know what the pools really cost. What would 600 really bring in? So what I'm trying to say is, I think what we try to do in raising this at this point, even though we have some residents think we should be lowering it, we need to just, if we do that, we really don't have a budget to work from. Once Susan has the parameters, then she can come back and her staff in Milton and give us a budget that will be subject to public hearings, zero-based budget. They will give us their best judgments as to what they think that can be funded, how it's fiscally responsible, and what we can meet the values of Columbia. We will be working at another meeting on just what we think the values are. We will have tons of public hearings where the public will tell us when they have a concrete document to work with, and they'll begin to see what this is really all about in terms of what the pools cost, what the sports clubs cost, what the child care costs, go down the list. We will be very open and transparent about that. So at that point, if we say, this isn't going to work, we need to do something else, that's the time we may have to do it. But right now, to do it in advance, just almost throwing a dart at the wall and saying, hey, 1 cent will give us 600, and we don't even know what we can use that for. If we put that in a special fund, which sounds great, will it even open 23 pools? I doubt it. And what will all the other people say when we have not met their needs? It could get really messy. So let's give our staff the parameters and let them provide a budget, and then the board is the policymakers. Sorry, went on too long.
All right, Dick and Milton, and then we're going to have to wrap it up and go to a vote. Dick and Milton.
I want to make it clear just what we're doing tonight. Susan has looked into a crystal ball and is giving us her best estimate of what kind of revenue we're looking at. We've told her that we want our expenditures to be $35,000 less, and so out of that we get an expenditure budget. And our next job will be to come up with a strategy to determine just what is important to us and how important, and what are the what are the profits and losses on each of these little amenities that we provide. And that's going to be an interesting discussion. But right now, tonight, we're just trying to give her enough stuff to start cranking on this budget. So I've been very pleased with what I've seen so far.
Okay, Milton, and then we're going to wrap it up.
And I'll be quick. Number one, I think the board, I do believe that the board should not be beating itself up on that you cut service. You have not cut service. You had the Columbia Association, like the rest of the country or any other organization, had forced upon it circumstances where in February we were going forward with an $80 million in income. Over a 90-day period, it dropped down to an estimate of 56 million, and we had to make adjustments accordingly. And so we had to back off some of our services that we were providing to the community. And I can tell you that I've had many conversations with individuals where I've told that same story, and they said, Milton, the Columbia Association did what we expected you to do. You had your revenues reduced, so you cut back on the services you were provided. And I think that's going to be the same case going forward. We're right now, we're looking at our revenues for 2022 to probably be no greater than what the budget, the revised budget that the board approved in June. And the last point that I make, and the board has heard me say this before, as Columbia Association, we should not be setting our annual charge rate in a vacuum. We're a part of Howard County, and our residents and our commercial property owners are part of Howard County, and they also have a property tax, a personal income tax on top of all of this.
Okay, I'm gonna call the vote here. So the motion is to adopt the recommendation from staff, basically keep the annual charge in the cap as it is currently in the budget. I'm gonna take a call vote, because Janet,
Yes.
Shari,
No.
Jenny,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Nancy,
Come back to me.
okay, Jess,
Yes, this is to keep it the same, right?
yeah, Alan,
Yeah.
No,
Renee,
Yes.
Andy, yes, Nancy?
Yes.
All right, so that passes. All right, now we're on to guidance for membership rates for fiscal year 2022. And Milton, anything you want to say, or should I just go to Susan?
Well, we can have Susan, and Dan is out there also, because a lot of this is tied to our sport and fitness function to a great extent.
Okay, who wants to start? Susan? Dan?
Let Susan start.
Susan,
Yeah,
okay.
so, we presented, back in, I guess about 3 weeks ago, that we would, propose, just that you would, give us the discretion to potentially increase rates for non-residents up to market, if they're not already there, and for, residents, 2 to 3%, depending on the type of the membership. And also, one of the things it would allow us to do is to just kind of smooth out some like oddities where there's not enough a proper difference between an individual and a two-member, or a two-member and a family, and things like that. So I just would like to ask for that flexibility to provide that for us to do that work. We're doing market comparisons, and so we know where we stand. We do that every year. And the other alternative we offered, but I'm less comfortable with this personally, is that we would set a minimum contribution from membership revenue for sport and fitness total operating expenses. That is an option. We could do that, and then it would be up to staff to figure out how that's done with membership rates, with programs, and everything. So we would just ask you then to give us the leeway to do what we thought we needed to do, what we need to do to make that revenue contribution. And I agree that I think if anything changes, I like the way Janet said it, that we would be looking at this, also from a cost standpoint, and this is a choice. We value our members greatly, but it's not something that should be significantly subsidized. I don't know if anyone has anything to add, or or I turn it back over to you, Andy.
Dan, anything you want to add, or?
No, I think Susan did a good job of summarizing it. I would just add, that one thing COVID has brought along with it, as well as the changes in patterns, is the expenses are going up dramatically. Supply chains have been severely disrupted, and the cost servicing per member is just increasing. Everything costs more. I mean, you see it when you go to the grocery stores. Cleaning products, which we're obviously spending a significant amount on now, the cost is going up astronomically. It's eye-watering at times when the vendor comes back and tells us what the prices are. So continuing to provide the services is going to get just more and more expensive as this goes on.
Okay, discussion. So staff has given us basically, I'll say their primary recommendation, which is the 2 to 3% increase with flexibility or setting a target. The other alternative is setting a target. I'll kick off a little bit of conversation. I think we definitely have to raise rates. I just think given the climate we're in, and so I think, yeah, 2 to 3% is, I mean, definitely, got to raise rates. Okay, that's my thought. So, Lynn is next, and then Dick, and then Shari.
Nancy put her name on the list too.
Nancy and Janet.
I'm sorry, wait a second. Too many people. I lost my thing. Sorry. I'm sorry. Nancy's first, and then Janet, and then Ginny. Sorry.
I have to say, after listening to the public complain about the facilities being covered by the annual charge, I do agree with them. I think that a lot of people in Columbia cannot afford to join the facilities, but they still pay the annual charge, and there is some kind of unfairness there. I feel strongly. I think that raising the rates to market rate for non-Columbia residents is a very smart idea. I like that idea. I agree with it completely. And I think that, yes, raising the Columbia residence rate 2 to 3%, we need the money. Let's face it, things have changed, and that's what we got to do. I agree with what you're saying.
Janet.
So I had a question on sort of a different way to look at it, and that was, I was curious if, I know that we allocate things to different departments, so like aside from that, is there an option to do something like sports and fitness needs to cover all of its own operating expenses kind of thing? And you know, and I will just say this, obviously I don't think the outdoor pools falls under that umbrella. I mean, I don't think anyone would expect sports and fitness to subsidize outdoor pools, but I'm just wondering if the target can be that each facility is recouping its own costs in the sense, like outside of the allocations of overhead that we would normally allocate to it. And I don't know how like feasible that is in terms of how we break things out, but I don't know your thoughts on that.
So we looked at that, and I think that is where the organization should go. Like we should move to that. I think to do that right now would be really difficult. For one, we don't know, you know, people's behavior is so different at this point than what it was previously. If we, so over the past few years, you know, sport and fitness was pretty, if you didn't have those allocations, and you took the outdoor pools out, sport and fitness did really cover its costs. But I think also you would need to acknowledge that, it would have to really be kind of, in order for staff to have a fighting chance of having that be successful, we would have to be allowed to operate the facilities, you know, the way that the professionals feel that they need to do. And, you know, like for example, when we did the membership restructure, we were directed not to increase revenue through that. It was to be revenue neutral. So we forced the prices to be lower. We would have to be able to make decisions about, you know, discounting and class schedules and operating hours and all those things that would really, you know, couldn't bear a lot of community, you know, involvement if we were going to really achieve that. So, but I think that's important to go in that direction, but I don't think we're ready to do that this year.
So Susan, along those lines then, what would you see as the steps that we could take in the short term to start moving in that direction. So, maybe not for this budget year, but for, um, for moving in toward that in the future.
So I think we could do an interim, like, next year we'd have hopefully, a better sense of how people feel about using our facilities and amenities, and we have a sense of what participation would be like. Then perhaps we could set a target of saying, okay, you need to no greater than 20%, and that's high. It's not going to be subsidy from the annual charge or something, where you could set some incremental percentages based on behavior and cost and rates and stuff. And then I think that would also be a nice way to adjust in or to move towards a more market competitive operation. The community could get used to that as well.
Milton, did you want to respond? Because you had.
Yes, I would just wanted to respond to Janet because Janet, I like that idea. To me, I agree with Susan that this year, FY22 is not the year to try that, but I'm a big believer that going forward, we have to put in place, CA has to put in place a model where the sport and fitness, and I especially like your idea of moving those 23 outdoor pools, because to me, that's a burden on sport and fitness, because number one, you know how I feel about 23 outdoor pools. But I do believe that the fitness clubs and the tennis clubs, the tennis program, there still have to be some help, in my opinion, with the swim center, just simply because of its age and its limited capacity. But I do believe those programs could do a better job sustaining itself on a longer term when it comes to the operations.
Okay, next, Ginny, and then Lynn.
Okay, thanks. When we talk about a percentage of the annual charge be no greater than, in terms of in the future, looking at how we'll support sports and fitness facilities, I would be interested in whether you would then remove that from the cost of subsidizing individuals that can't afford to join the clubs or get work, whatever we call it, the work program where they don't pay at all, but they work. That's an expense is that fair to put that on the sports and fitness program, or would you instead just put that under the annual charge? So none of this is that simple, I think, and maybe you have an answer for that. I don't. I would like Dan to just simply explain for the audience, at any rate, what goes under sports and fitness. I don't think that's commonly known. What facilities?
The sport and fitness department entails the 3 fitness clubs, Haven on the Lake, both golf courses, the tennis clubs, that's Wild Lake, Owen Brown, and Long Reach. Those are the 2 indoor and outdoor. There's tennis. We have a tennis club. We call it the athletic club, but that's included at the athletic club. The skate and sport park, the swim center, the 23 outdoor pools, and the ice rink.
Did you say the swim center?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be interesting if it would be, what we'd be thinking about is your department having some limitation of what percentage in total, as opposed to whether the ice rink could actually achieve that goal, or whatever could achieve that goal. The other last question I have, in terms of outdoor pools, we talk about, for the sports and fitness programs, raising the rates for residents, but making the non-resident rate competitive. Do we intend to, will we be doing the same thing for outdoor pools? Non-resident rates will be whatever competitive means. I have no idea.
Yeah, all membership rates would be included in the review.
Okay.
Okay, Lynn, and then Dick.
Yeah, there are so many angles to look at with this, and obviously we can't get to most of them just simply in doing this budget. but are there other sources of income we could look at? So much of what we do is really as in like subsidizing facilities for families that can't afford it. A lot of our just our free community programs. If we had, say, a 501c3 component at CA, is that possible that we could perhaps get grants from other organizations? How can we get this county and the state to increase, participation in so much of what we do? It's really just overall community service that helps everybody. How, is it worth looking at those options in a very broad way, after we finish with this immediate budget? There've got to be other things that we can do.
Dick, and then Shari.
Yes, this is basically a pricing theory exercise. You raise your rates, you make more money to a certain point where your participation drops off, and there's a sweet spot in there someplace where you maximize your income. And that's really a marketing question. It's very difficult to figure what it is because of the situation these days. But I'm hoping that Susan and Dan are working on that and trying to figure out where where that sweet spot is.
Alan, oh, sorry, Shari, and then Alan.
Yeah, just to reiterate, and I think I agree with a lot of what's being said. I like Janet's idea of breaking off pieces to see what because we're doing different things in those different pieces. There are different types of community benefits. I think also the idea of pricing. For example, what I've heard from the millennials is that we've already priced out a lot of folks who would really like to be part of different parts of what CA offers. So, I mean, I think we have raised rates over the years. In fact, just about every budget, I believe we've gone up 2 or 3%. I don't remember a membership dropping over the years, certainly, that I've been on the board. I understand the reasoning for it, and I think it's correct that you're paying for something extra, but I really do worry that the idea that Columbia was going to be open to, it's the bell curve, and the idea that Columbia Association was supposed to be addressing the folks that fell in the middle of the bell curve. And what we're seeing is many more people who have been hard hit economically. We are seeing singles. We are seeing young people whom I'm afraid are in fact being priced out. So I would like to suggest, just in terms of our general thinking, that we also think about setting goals for increasing membership in the most popular areas by maybe lowering that by, this is business 101, that you increase the folks who take advantage of it by pricing it closer to what they can afford, and you get back more because of the increased numbers. So as we're looking at all different kinds of possibilities, I think that's a possibility too, and we should not rule that out.
Okay, we'll go to Alan and Milton, and then I think we've done a lot of discussion. I'll try to call the vote. Alan and then Milton.
Yeah, I get we're talking about a number of things, but to me, we're talking about the context. It'd be very easy just to vote up or down on this specific narrow question, but that loses for me the context. Susan, when I became a board member, it seemed to me that sports and fitness basically paid for itself. It was not 100%. And there was always the question of the pools and so on. So somehow you said that changed. I don't need, what's the short story version of when and how that changed?
There are two main contributors. One is the cost, the investment in the facility. So was tearing down the tennis bubble and replacing it with a new building, and all of the other improvements and renovations that really had been delayed for quite a while. So that's caused a significant increase in depreciation expense. And that's the second largest expense after personnel costs for the whole organization and for sport and fitness by far. So it was that capital reinvestment's the biggest thing. The second thing was the other costs to increase services that we didn't pick up or didn't cover in rate increases, such as the increases in the minimum wage that have happened year over year, and other regulatory requirements for paid time off, and basically those three things have really driven those. And we never increased the prices to offset the costs of. We were never able to increase.
Thank you. Yeah, I've floated for some years now the idea of maybe we should separate from sports and fitness and let Dan run it as a business, lease the land to somebody who knows what they're doing. And because for me, this dovetails with our whole question of what's the purpose of CA. And if I understand our founding documents correctly, running gyms is not part of our founding purpose.
Well, nor pools.
Well, that could be argued as well, but to me, the pools have become a community benefit that is worth. It's a community benefit that's worth the whole community supporting. I absolutely agree with those who say that it's not sustainable or even fair that the whole community support my ability to pay less to go to the gym. That's not. I don't mean me as a board member. I mean me as a community member. I don't think that's fair or sustainable, and we shouldn't be using our annual charge money to do that. Which to me is part of the problem. You know, we keep talking around this, and Susan, I hear that your principles have been we don't, and Milton, we don't separate chunks of income. But to me, those are two very different chunks of income: the money we get from services and the money we get from an annual charge. And we need to. I think we're not doing a service to the community by lumping them together. We're doing a disservice because we should be funding community-wide things from the annual charge and funding the expenses of services for those who pay for it.
Right.
And it's also and where they merge to me though, I sort of get from an accounting standpoint, you've drummed it into me enough, Susan, over the years, that when you do a capital project, that increases operating expenses because of the depreciation. But to me, that's a different kind of operating expense. And if, you know, as long as we own the buildings, I could see that being on the whole community, and maybe not fair to require sports and fitness to cover, but at least not the entire amount. But I think that's, again, part of why I think we need to our different income and expenses. Thank you.
Okay, Milton, and then we're gonna head for
Nancy.
Oh,
Nancy's
Nancy?
name is there.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I just would like to add what I wanted to add earlier and I didn't bother to. I'm sorry. I think that the pools, as others have said, is an amenity of living in Columbia. And I don't know how, but I would like us to strive to make that something that everyone can use in Columbia, whether they're members or not, or make membership. And I understand the pools lose money every year, but I think that it's an important amenity for Columbia. I think we've learned that this year, especially because we didn't have them, and the significance for individuals or for people that live here. If there's a way we can find to structure payment so that it's, I don't know, but to find a way that is separate from a membership to the other CA facilities. I would really like to see that happen.
All right, Susan wants to reply to something. Susan?
No, I like Alan's suggestion, because if we carve depreciation out, sport and fitness has no trouble covering their costs. So that would be excellent.
And
Milton,
I just think everyone, and I hear Alan and I hear others talk about, you hang your hat so much on the annual charge. Let's go back, and I know I'm talking about hindsight. Let's go back to February. The budget you approved in February. It was an $80 million, 45 million annual charge, and I think it was 35 million sport and fitness. So if this board just had $45 million to do what you want in this community under the umbrella of annual charge, I think you will have a big problem.
All right. So staff's recommendation is, I'll take the first one. Increase to 2 to 3% depending on the type of membership, and up to market competitive increase for non-resident memberships. So is there a motion to adopt staff's recommendation?
Andy, when you say, when you say separate, you going 1 and 2 as the two separate things?
Yes.
Well, those are alternatives to each other.
Right.
You could end up voting them both in. You don't have to vote
No,
one or two.
I think you need to give staff, one guidance or another, because the second one says, staff, you just have to meet a target and you're gonna have to figure out where the prices are.
So why not just
First
vote between
one
one
said-
or two?
You want a 2 to 3% increase and a market rate. They are different. Am I correct, or is it?
No,
I get that, but so we shouldn't vote them both in, if I understand.
Right,
No.
that's why,
So
why
if you vote for one, don't vote for two.
Why not just vote between 1 and 2? Vote one
wait,
or vote
isn't market rate for the non-resident members, and the 2 to 3% is for the resident members?
yes, that's all in recommendation one.
Okay.
So is there a motion to adopt?
Andy, those are two different things.
Yes,
So why not, there are actually three things here. One is non-resident, one is resident, and one is the alternative approach.
Which is?
well, the resident and the non-resident are together in the first recommendation.
Recommendation, yes.
Yes, I understand that, but these are real, they've been lumped together as one recommendation, but they're really two different things.
To clarify, I think it is board policy, and it always has been board policy, that non-residents pay market rates.
Right.
That's a given. Now the choice is, do we as a board dictate an increase in the fee, or do we let the staff work out what the fees ought to be in order to meet some particular goal? And I would suggest, instead of voting for one at a time, we just go through the list and say, do you want one or do you want two?
That's my thought.
I'm going to do that. I will call and ask. So I'm going to ask you to vote, and you got to either choose one or two, and let us know which.
That's
Oh.
fair.
Okay, that's what we're going to do. All right, Janet, one or two.
One.
Shari,
I am in favor of raising non-resident. I am not in favor of raising annual charge payers.
Wait, we already voted on
Number
annual
three.
charge, right?
And
So that falls under one. You can take that any way you want. If that forces me to vote no, then I vote no on both.
I think
Any-
what Sherry's saying is she would like to separate it out so you have 3 votes, one for
well, okay,
3%.
Yeah, let's
second
break this
one
down.
for-
It's too confusing.
The second one for.
It's not confusing. Why don't we vote on one, and if not enough people are in support of one or the other, then we break it down. If someone is, then let's just move forward, please.
Okay,
all right, Ginny, one or two.
1.
Dick,
Two.
Lynn, Lynn,
Sorry, 2.
Nancy,
1.
Jess,
1.
Alan,
1.
Renee,
One.
Andy, one. let's go with, there were 7 votes for 1. Let's just go with 1. Just tell that's our direction to staff. All right, let's move on to parameters for a new reserve fund. Milton, anything you wanna?
No, that memo has not changed. So Susan, if you want to put it up and the board can have a discussion about it or address any questions you may have generated since the work session.
All right. So staff's recommendation is that we create a reserve fund. And we look at funding the first part of it with $2 million. And also that we start paying back,
$1 million
yeah, 1 million of the $3 million we borrowed from the
insurance.
general liability. All right, discussion. All right, is there a motion to adopt staff's recommendations on the reserve fund? Let's get it started that way.
Oh, no,
So
When you
moved.
say-
Janet,
yes.
is there?
And their recommendation section had several paragraphs. Is the motion covering all those paragraphs or just one, or what are we talking about here now?
I assume it covers everything for right now.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
That
Thank you.
will get our discussion started. Is there a second to Janet's
I'll,
motion?
I'll second.
Dick. All right, discussion now.
Andy?
Yes.
Andy, okay.
Jay.
One, I like what the staff's saying here in that, I think it's April 30th, they will be coming back to the board with a well thought out policy about what is a reserve fund, how do you go about setting it up, what should it be used for, et cetera, et cetera. But that would not occur until after we approve the budget. So my point is, I think this is premature. In addition to that, of the budget that we'll have, say it's 56 million or 55 million, 1 million will already be set aside to repay the insurance fund. So that's not available for services. Another 3 million, unless I misunderstand this, is being required by the lenders to make sure that's available. So that's another 3 million that's not going to be available for services. If we then, and then 35,000 we're hoping to have as the assets. So that's money that we are not going to be able to touch or will not be available for services. So now we want to take on top of that an additional 2 million without any really plan about how we're going to use it, et cetera. I think at best it's premature. We need a plan in place, and then we can decide whether reserve fund makes sense, especially when we desperately need to provide more services to residents. We can't afford to just strip another 2 million on top of the 6 million that will be just sitting there right now that we can't use. Thank you.
Susan, are Ginny's figures correct? I'm just not.
Yeah, so we do have to set aside $3 million for the new financing. And we recommend that we would return $1 million of the excess cash that we transferred out to the general liability self-insurance fund. And then we would say to hold back $2 million to start a reserve fund. I mean, I would recommend that if you didn't want to do the $2 million reserve fund, then we put the whole $3 million back in the general liability trust.
Hey, but also, if I may, Susan, I think we need to clarify what Jenny says right about the $3 million that the bank is requiring, but that's not money available to us. We would have to borrow that anyway. they're just saying is that on that line of credit, you have to keep that $3 million there. They're basically saying that money is not available for us to borrow.
Correct.
So we can't treat it as a reserve fund, basically what I'm trying to say, because if we borrow it, all of a sudden that's another cost to us.
Right. Okay. Susan, anything else you want to add? Or? All right, let's go. Renee's up, and then Jess.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand this. So the $3 million that the lender is requiring us to set aside, is that money that actually cash that we have to set aside in an account, or is it that you can't borrow $3 million against the line of credit?
It's cash that we have to set aside. I have to look at that. The liquidity requirement, we were treating it as cash to set aside, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a liquidity either way.
Well, it is, and yeah, I understand that. But my comment is, let's take for a second that it's cash. We would not be able to just use it for the swimming pools. So then we come down to the $2 million or some other figure for the rainy day fund. I guess I'm good with that. I'm concerned that you only have a $35,000 bottom line and you have no rainy day fund. So if things got bad, and they could, or they may never get any worse than they are right now, we have no ability to reach into a savings account to pay a bill, or better yet, to pay our employees if we have to close for a week. I think that having a rainy day fund is a good idea. I do also agree, though, that we need to have some parameters for how that fund's going to work, and that to know that it's only going to be used for extraordinary circumstances. So those are my only comments.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Jess, and then Alan.
So I wanted to say that I do agree that parameters do need to be set. That's pretty typical when you have a reserve fund. I disagree with Jenny that it's premature to set up the fund. It's okay. You know, for example, for my organization, we've had cash reserves for 10 years. We've never had a policy on how to use them because we never had to use them. Now, for the first time, we may have to use them. So my board is developing a policy now as to what that would look like. So I think the policy on how it's used can be developed after the money is set aside. I don't think that's a reason not to go ahead and choose to build the reserve.
Alan, and then Janet, and then Susan.
Yeah, I'm really sort of feeling ambivalent in a sense, because I don't see this as premature. I see this as years late in terms of having reserves. So, but then the question is, you know, to use the analogy of the rainy day fund, 2020 has been nothing but a monsoon. So if we're not going to use it, this is the time. I don't know that, you know, just what do they say, you know, when it's raining, it's not the time to repair the roof on your house. That's why I'm ambivalent. I like the idea of having reserves, and I'm questioning the wisdom of holding back significant chunks of our budget in order to create one now, when we need to be maximizing our ability to be responsive to our mission right now in a time of great contraction.
Janet, and then Susan.
So multiple years ago, when we were not in this position, I strongly advocated for a rainy day fund and was pretty much the only one who advocated for it. So I would like to say that when we had the money, no one on this board wanted to set it aside. And so I feel like I'm saying, Alleluia, thank you, please set aside some reserve, because I think any responsible budget has some excess. And keep in mind that even though we have very favorable terms on our lending, every amount that we borrow requires interest paid back that comes out of our annual assessment. So there is a cost to every dollar that we borrow. regardless of how favorable those terms are. So, you know, it's one thing to make a decision in very favorable economic times to fund capital expenditures for buildings that, you know, are sorely in need of repair and or a facility that we've decided is worthwhile, versus borrowing for, you know, more critical issues, you know, particularly to keep things afloat, which we don't want to see happen, and which is, you know, money that is spent that unnecessarily, in my opinion, if there's some sort of reserves fund. So I don't think it's premature. I agree that it's years late, but I don't think that we should hold off either, because right now we're pretty much at the bottom. You know, like I hope our budget is in the worst position that it will ever be in. And while it will be uncomfortable, I would rather have it be uncomfortable right now and have us start getting back on the correct footing. And I'd like to take this opportunity, now that we're here, I'd like to take this opportunity as a reset. And I think that goes also to our planned values conversation, because, you know, we need to decide very clearly, like, what needs to fund itself, what do we feel are community services that we want to fund, and how do we make those two things work within the confines of what we have to spend.
Susan, and then Dick and Milton.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we did have, and we still have some excess cash in that general liability self-insurance trust. So, as is evident by the fact that we could remove $3 million, and the actuarial report says you don't have to return it. So, but I would say that we did use most of it. So we were not, you know, totally or we removed a lot of it. We ended up not having to draw on the line at the level that we thought. So I think it's important to have some funds, and I do agree that maybe we can't get to where we would like to be, certainly not now, but I think it's important to start. And we do have the reserve, and I agree, Janet, if we don't need to borrow, we shouldn't, and we never would. We're responsible for that and making that careful, but that is a safety net at this point as well.
Okay, Dick, and then Milton.
I'm trying to understand where this money is going to come from. There are two sources. One, we cut our expenses by $2 million, and we're already cutting back on everything. So now we just cut a couple more millions out of the picture, or we're borrowing it and we're paying interest on it to sit nowhere. So I'm kind of baffled. As Alan said, you know, this is not the time to repair the roof. Right now, we need every penny we can get just to give minimal services to our residents. And when this COVID thing is over, which might not be for a year or two, then we can start thinking about taking money and tucking it away someplace. It would seem to me that we do need to give some money back to our insurance fund, because we don't want to get cut short there. But I just think it's premature to start setting up a fund with money we don't have.
Milton?
You know, I hear what Jenny said, but I believe that the public in this community, basically, we were once an $80 million to be an $80 million organization. And the only reserves, the only fallback position we had if something happened, which did happen, was borrowing. And we are saying right now that we have not learned our lesson, and we're not willing to be a disciplined organization planning for the future, because we're saying that we have to put every penny we have back into the community. I believe that we should be providing the services we can, but I believe also as an organization, we should be disciplined, and the community expect us to be disciplined to have a reserve fund. Nonprofits have reserve funds. Governments have fund balances. We don't have anything. It's almost like a personal individuals having to fall back on your credit cards when you lose your job or things change on you.
Jenny?
Yeah. I'd like to predict that if we have 2 million in a reserve fund, and believe me, I am all for reserve funds. The timing is my concern. And the fact that let's think through what exactly the policy will be, because I think every one of us sees that 2 million going for this, that, or the other thing. We need agreement and we need that done in a public process. But I will like to predict that if that 2 million is sitting there, you are going to have residents come out and demand you use that money for whatever service is not in the budget. You're not providing in the budget, so.
All right, I guess it's me. After all the discussions, over the years, I never really saw the need for the rainy day fund, for a lot of the reasons that people have mentioned. But I think the pandemic convinced me that we really do need a rainy day fund. And the difficulty has always been that there's a cost to set up the rainy day fund. And previous boards, including me, have never really been willing to pay that cost. But I think that given the pandemic, this is actually the good time to set up the fund and at least put in an initial amount of money. And I think our public, I think our residents really understand that, because many of them have been saying, why didn't you have a rainy day fund? And yes, it is going to be painful, but the problem is, no matter when you start the rainy day fund, it's going to be painful. Even when we were running 70 and 75 and $80 million budgets, we weren't willing to set up a rainy day fund. And my feeling is, if we don't set it up now and things get good, it's kind of like the federal government. We're going to say, oh, we don't need it. And so, yeah, this time I'm in favor of the rainy day fund. Alan?
I'm always happy for people to learn lessons. I hope that's what we all do over time. We've been following, Janet, when you say you're the only one, I've been in favor of talking about it, and then ended up always taking staff's advice that we don't need it. So I don't want to count myself as someone who was not in favor. I would just follow.
No one was in favor, Alan, I can assure you, but Greg was the most vocal.
Okay, let's be quiet here. Okay,
So,
anything else, Alan?
We've been following staff advice up till now and not had one.
Dick?
I'd like to suggest that when we are preparing our actual budget, maybe we should postpone this discussion and see if we've got $2 million to spare. This is a budget question.
Did you get your answer, Dick, as to where this money's coming from?
Nobody knows.
I beg to differ.
Well, differ. Where's it coming from?
It would be from so we would do it on a cash flow basis, and it would be, as we would just not, just like we're doing now, we're watching the cash inflow and the cash outflow, and we would release less cash than we are taking in. So it's a combination of the lower capital expenses and the cost-saving measures that are in place now. So I don't believe that it would require any additional constraints other than, our summary of cash flows for this year shows that we can do it, and that's in the quarterly report that you got on Monday. So it doesn't make us have to do anything worse at this point. Now,
but Susan, when we get to the end of our fiscal year and we're dipping into our lending, are we going to have to lend $2 million more or borrow $2 million more?
That's the question.
Yeah, probably. Well, no, we would borrow. It depends. I think that ultimately we would have to borrow for the timing, but I don't believe we would have to borrow more. No.
And pay interest on it.
But, so the cash flow projections right now show us needing to use the line in, I think, late May, May of 2021. It would be repaid in July with the annual charge revenue. So that's more of a timing thing than a dependency on the line. So we are really managing the cash flow much more disciplined and strictly than we.
Renee and then Alan,
No,
and then we'll try to wrap it up.
yeah, actually, Dick asked the right question. I mean, if we're going to borrow to put money in the rainy day fund, then we're not really creating a rainy day fund.
No, we should not be borrowing. We would not do that.
Right. But if we're borrowing on the line of credit towards the end of the year, because of that $2 million sitting out there, then we're borrowing for the rainy day fund.
So we would be immediately repaying it. So if you want to, at the end of the year.
I understand that, but at the end of the year, at the end of each, I guess the problem here, on April 30th, will we have borrowed against the line of credit?
The projection at this point says no.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, Alan?
I'm being a finance dummy here, I guess. I don't get how this is a cash flow question. We have let's call it, I know it's more than that. We have a $50 million budget. 35,000 we're going to assume is zero for the purposes of my conversation right now. We're going to spend all 50 million. Where's the 2 million going to come from?
It's exactly a cash flow question. So I'll pull up a cash flow statement and show you how that works. So let me find that. Sorry, it might take me a second. So if you want to have other conversation, I'll pull that up.
Well, if we have a 50 million budget and we need to save 2 million, we would really only be spending 48 million. Is that what you're asking, Alan, or is that?
That's my assumption what it has to be, but that's not what I'm hearing.
Well, where are you going to get?
Question, it sounds like we're going to just sort of
Which was
$2 million somewhere around, and I don't get how that works.
No, that was my point, and it depends on if we meet all the service needs and program needs, then it's not a problem. But if there are some that we feel we can't afford because we're talking about only 48 million being spent as opposed to 50, you're going to have a lot of pressure on you to use that. Why do you keep that 2 million? I mean,
well, you're not only going to have to come up with that $2 million out of expenditures, but you're probably going to have to hit the line of credit a month or two early.
Well, wait a minute, because if what she's looking at is the depreciation expense as a non-cash expense. And we're trying to decide how we're going to divvy up that depreciation expense. It's probably going to be somewhere around 13 million, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So far, you've said to put $8 million towards capital spending. We're talking about putting $1 million towards the cash reserve. The $3 million for TD Bank, I don't think really is a cash item because you don't have to borrow against the line of credit. So that leaves you about $2 million of non-cash expenses that you can use against this rainy day fund.
How does non-cash become a rain? I'm really asking, how does non-cash become a fund?
It's not non-cash. It's that if you look at your expenses, you have to pay cash for all of your expenses except for depreciation. Depreciation doesn't cost you any cash. Depreciation is an accountant's way of writing down the value of an asset over a specific period of time, 20 or 30 years. So
we're charging sports and fitness depreciation. That's how come they're not making their numbers.
I understand. And by the accounting standards, that is a requirement that you write down the value of an asset that you capitalize over its useful life. So we have no choice but to do that. Even if you don't want to do it, our auditors would make us do it.
Yeah, I mean, we have to depreciate, and that's an expense.
That's right. So that $13 million can be divvied up into other things.
Well, if you look at the cash flow summary here, the sources and uses from the first quarter book, it shows you where we think we'll be at the end of the year. So here's your $55 million in revenue, here's the expenses. This is what we think the net income will be. This is what was budgeted. We add back depreciation because that's a non-cash expense. We have some adjustments here that are changes in the working capital accounts on the balance sheet. And then, so we anticipate, as of a couple weeks ago, that we would generate $11.2 million from cash, from operations and investing activities. So out of that cash generated, we project, what we showed at that time was $3 million going back into the self-insurance trust. Our long-term debt payments, the principal payments are $4 million. We projected that with the capital budget of $8 million, this is really the spending. This shows this is higher than $8 million because there were projects in the pipeline that we're paying for now, work that was done earlier in the year or at the end of the last fiscal year. And then we got the net proceeds from the new financing. So we're showing at this point, we expected to have $2.7 million, approximately $2 million in net borrowings. So,
and Susan, that's where you're going to find the money to do the rainy day fund.
Right, and we already know that the capital spending is going less than that. So this is, I'm sorry, I have the wrong version. 1,000 apologies. But so let me find the right one. But if you look at the budget, this is a way. Focus on the budget because this is incorrect. But we ended up with $2.7 million in cash that we would expect to have. So you all got the quarterly report. It is. Page 11 in the quarterly financial report, and it shows actually it's much better than this. There's a $3.9 million favorable representation.
All right, let's try to wrap this up. The motion is basically the creation of the reserve fund, along with all those, everything that was recommended by staff on that.
Just on the fund.
Here you go. That's what's in the quarterly financial report. This is where we think we'll be at the end.
Well, help me out then, Susan. If we expect cash to be 2 million, these numbers are small, 2,741, 2,000,007.
Yeah, that's the budget.
Then why are we only expecting a $35,000 change in our?
Because of the almost $12 million in non-cash expense, it's a depreciation, and because of the proceeds from the financing that we got in June. So the combination of those results in a favorable projection, 2.7 million budget, 3.9 for the current estimate for cash. That's how. See these big positive numbers? That's how.
Just so I need to be clear. Those numbers under cash required, those are all coming out of the depreciate, the 11.68 as add back depreciation, or those additional borrowing, additional financing proceeds, or whatever?
So that question doesn't really make a lot of sense. So this is cash generated from operations. It's budgeted amount. It's $9,661,000. That's what the operations and the investing activities of the organization are going to provide this much cash. Out of that $9.661 million, we were proposing and budgeted that we would put $3 million back into the self-insurance trust. That was before this was generated, before we started this reserve conversation. We will pay our long-term debt principal payments of $4 million, We think we had budgeted for 10 million in capital. It's an $8 million budget plus 2 million in the pipeline, like I said. We
Right.
got 2 million in net proceeds from capital, so that's a plus. That's coming back. So we had 9,661,000 generated from operations. We need a net of 6,920,000. We would end up with additional cash of 2,741,000.
And the 10 million or 10,085,000, I'm not sure which number to focus on, is coming from borrowing, correct?
Right, from the refinancing that we did, we paid off the line and we got the, the term loan, so the net effect of those.
So we're getting some extra money in. So my question was ignorant, I get you, but it was trying
No,
to
I
figure
didn't
out
mean
what's
to,
going
I'm
on.
sorry, I didn't mean to, I'm not saying it was ignorant.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to take the vote. So this is staff's recommendation. You can read it on page 3 of the background. Janet,
Yes.
Shari,
Yes.
Jenny,
No.
Dick,
No.
Lynn,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Andy, yes. Okay, that passes.
Andy,
Yes.
I have a suggestion. In the future, I'd like it if you would start your roll calls with different people each time. I think it's unfair to ask Janet to lead off each time. And
Okay.
Well,
Now, what happens down is I have a spreadsheet.
I understand, but
Yeah.
you can start
All
in
right.
the middle and work
Right.
your way around.
it can go in the
I'll
same
try.
order, and we just start with the next line down.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, good point. Thank you. All right, policy on e-scooters. Milton. Okay,
Well, I guess the information is in the packet. We're revisiting this. You've seen the contract that we have drafted. Well, not the contract, the license agreement that we have drafted with SPEN. So for me, and while Kristen is here also, for me is that what questions do you have?
okay, Kristen, you want to add anything or?
I don't have anything to add. Jessica is also here. I mean, I think that we incorporated the concerns of the board into the license agreement and the addendum that would be attached there too. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Yeah.
Hi, Jessica, you popped up there.
Okay,
Andy, I just have one.
a second. Okay, yes, Jenny?
Oh, okay. If I understand it, I think you've agreed that this will be a pilot. It'll be limited to with spins. It'll be limited to downtown and Gateway. And in terms of it being renewed after a year, those conditions would continue unless the board changed them. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's guaranteed. Now, the only question I have is why is it different for someone that owns the e-scooter as opposed to a commercial e-scooter? Why are we allowing someone that owns their own scooter to go any place on our path system and not be limited to Gateway and not be limited to what the commercial ones are limited to?
Well, how would you stop them?
I don't know. Sign something. If it's in any way a concern about safety. Okay, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying how to explain it to residents that are trying to figure out why they're on the path system.
Jenny, if I can.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What?
Jess, are you there?
Josh, the internet!
I
Jess,
just,
we can hear you. Jess, we can hear you. We just can't see you.
Yeah, I lost my internet too.
yeah, I did too. But I can hear people.
Same
Jessica,
here.
if you
Yep.
want to say something.
We're working to resolve the issue. Give us a moment.
Good job. No, I'm not saying I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying, how do we explain it to residents if they start complaining about somebody that owns their own e-scooter speeding and getting, potential accidents, et cetera, on other paths? And we've limited the commercial. That's all I'm asking is, how do you explain that?
Kristen, this is Jessica. My internet just dropped me and I've just logged in. I can answer that question.
Jessica, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you all. Jenny, I'm sorry if I missed anything while I was reconnecting. Fundamentally, staff's recommendation for separating the private policy versus the commercial e-scooter policy is they are serving different needs and serving different purposes.
Jessica, you have two microphones on.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. Thank you. Sorry, guys.
That's
I've
better.
been avidly watching you all night, and then the second I went to speak, it stopped. So the commercial e-scooter sharing company is a commercial service that people will be utilizing as they come upon it or as meets their commuter needs. The policy that we are recommending changing for all of Columbia Association's open space is to address the changes that have been made at the county and the state level, whereas citizens in Howard County, including Columbia Association members, will start using their e-scooters that they personally own on the county right-of-ways as if they are bicycles. And it is not our recommendation to ask our residents to know when they have crossed the boundary from the public right-of-way onto CA property, since our pathway system is such an integral part of the transportation network that they may be utilizing. So our recommendation for the open space policy is reflective of those changes at the county and the state level and how residents interact with our pathways and the transportation network system that's set up in Howard County. Does that address the question of why?
Okay, Milton?
Well, I was going to pose, Jessica, I think and please correct me if I'm wrong. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think part of the response also is that with the commercial e-scooters, they can have more control over those.
Access CA property through geofencing, and that does not exist for privately held scooters that are utilized by Columbia residents outside of the SPIN services.
Okay. I noticed I've seemed to have lost a number of the board members. Oh, my connection.
I've called in. I'm on my phone now. I've lost you altogether on the meet. And this is Nancy. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Nancy, I can hear you.
I can hear you, Nancy.
Thank you. Yeah, but, well, when Jess lost hers, I lost mine. And I can't get it back.
It seems like there might be a server error.
How many are on the call now?
Nancy, I can
Yeah.
understand you. This is Jessica. Is there anyone
Hi,
else on the call?
Jessica. I did hear Milton before, but I don't hear.
Of a liability with our pathways for any of the kind of uses that are on it.
I hear you. I don't fully understand it, but I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to, any further discussion, I'd like to take the vote. So this is on approving the new policy for private e-scooters. I'm supposed to do this differently. All right, let's start with Jenny. Jenny?
She's muted.
No, I'm here. I just gotta find a button. No.
Okay, Dick.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Lynn.
Well, I'll
What's
say yes, but I'm not real sure.
I'm sorry, Lynn, what did you vote?
I voted yes, I guess.
Oh, yes, okay. Nancy is not here. Jess.
An enthusiastic yes.
Alan.
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Andy. Yes. Janet.
Yes.
And Shari's not here yet.
I am here.
You are? Oh, good. Shari, welcome.
Yes, I am here, and I vote no.
No. All right. So that passes. All right, let's go on to board discussion. Pre-filed state legislation, there's really nothing. You saw the memo.
There's none.
So let's go on to a discussion on how to securely and manageably invite individuals other than board members, staff to directly join virtual board meetings and work session. What I did, I will tell the board, I found out tonight that we are live streaming our meetings and work sessions, our monthly meetings and work sessions, and we are now using YouTube to make it easier for people to view it. And the link is on our homepage as well as the board webpage. So just to let you know that that was one thing that staff did to make it easier. The IT staff did to make it easier to see our meetings. Okay.
It's on the agenda that anyone who wants to call in and participate into the board meeting, they can contact us and we'll make sure they are provided with the number so they can call in. And as I said, sometimes we have individuals who want to do resident speak out and other times we don't. So from what I believe, and I checked with a couple other organizations, including a municipality, we're providing our residents under these circumstances the opportunity to call into our meeting and share their comments based on the agenda that is available to them in advance. And also they still have the opportunity afterwards to use our website and send emails to the board. And so to me, I see that we are providing our community with an opportunity to participate in board meetings and work sessions under these circumstances. And as I said, we are live streaming the work sessions and the board meeting.
Okay, Alan?
I'd like to get an X.
Okay, can everybody mute? Because there's some feedback
We've
going on.
got Shari, who's probably got her computer speaker on, plus
Oh, okay.
plus her phone.
All right, Alan.
Three things. Now, I get we still got people who aren't muted. I get what you're saying, Milton, and for a one-way purpose, we got it. But for me, there are three things wrong with the way we're doing it now. One is the particular platform we're using only allows 9 people to show up. We got 10 people on our board right there. That's problematic. We're not seeing everybody. Other platforms allow us to see more people, and so we can actually all participate with each other visually. Resident Speak Out, I had a resident contact me today with some great ideas. I said, why don't you get into Resident Speak Out? Person said, well, I didn't make the deadline. So we're not providing the ability for people within a short time frame to come in and get Resident Speak Out. Plus, the way we're doing it means we all sit around twiddling our thumbs while whoever it is contacts the person and sees if they're there, and they call, and it just, I don't understand. And then also sometimes it's been helpful to have people in the audience who have some expertise, and we can say, whoever you are, Kim, you've got some expertise in this. We'd like to hear from you. And the way we're doing it now, we've cut ourselves off from that expertise. If this was the only platform we had available to us, then we'd be doing our best. But it's even become like Kleenex. The word Zoom, people say I'm having a Zoom meeting regardless of the platform it's on. It's become so ubiquitous. Zoom allows us to see everybody. Zoom allows us to have people's cameras on or off. We don't have to have everybody who's attending show up on camera. We can have just the board show up on camera. Zoom allows us to have people there, and we can impose on them the same requirements we impose on them when we're face to face. You got to be quiet, and you can't interrupt in other ways that would be disruptive. And it just feels to me like I'm not even going to go to the outage we just had with Google, which was a total Google outage. I tried using my Google groups do some maintenance there while we were not being able to get in, and that was down too. But anything can go down. But I've not had that experience. I know people have had with Zoom, but it just seems like we got this technology that we could be using, that more people are familiar with than what we've got now. We could set up a regular meeting. We wouldn't have to get a new link every time from Janet for the meeting. It's just I don't get it why we're not doing the best thing that we could be doing.
Shari, and then Milton. Shari?
Now you got to unmute, Shari.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I agree with what Ellen is saying. I have used a variety of different platforms, and I think by far Zoom has been the easiest. It accommodates numbers of people. It would allow us to go back to resident speak out in the same way that we had it in the boardroom, without having to do any of this registering ahead of time, vetting, having this interface where we're all kind of sitting there. None of that is really necessary because the administrator controls the situation. I also have to say, I think it would be very helpful if we move the information about the resident speak out information about how to do it and put it directly on the website where the meetings are shown. That way people can see the board, they can scroll down, they can see what the process is, and they can see the meeting date. Right now, you have to go through far too many steps, and there's no indication that going into the agenda is going to give you any additional information. So I think resident speak out, which is part of all of our meetings, should be right there on the page where the board information is, so that it's clear to people right at the beginning.
Janet, and then Milton.
I didn't have anything, just that you can, Jess already put it in there. You can see up to 49 people at a time if you change your settings with the ellipsis on the side of the bar where the microphone and video camera are.
And
Milton.
And Alan, I think I need to clarify something. Look, I right now, our contract with Google has changed. We no longer can do 250. We can do 100. I don't have a problem with there's 100 individuals in our meetings. My only concern, and I've expressed that repeatedly to everyone, I think is that we should not be putting that invitation, that number to the invitation to this meeting, like all the board members get. Everyone that's on this meeting, staff and board, they get an invitation. My concern is that if we start posting that invitation, that number on our website, I'm concerned, and call me paranoid if you want to, that bad actors can get in and do things that's my concern. I don't have a problem with if we have 100 people attending these meetings. I just feel that if there's, for example, I can give Alan, I can say, Alan, here's your invitation. You can share it with 5 individuals. You're inviting them. We're not posting it on our website for the world to see it, that number, and then bad actors or anyone else who have want to do things that are not productive. So as I said, we can take 100 invites, split them among the board and staff. You can hand them out to whomever approaches you and say, I want to be a part of your board meeting. But my only concern is just putting that number of that invitation on our website, where then we have no control who's going to be invited. That's my only concern, Alan.
Dick. Dick, you're muted.
Well, that's kind of ironic. Is what I said, as I believe in communication. And we need to make this as simple as possible. And one of the things does staff have to go to headquarters to participate in this system? Or is that just the way it's? Because staff could do this from their own homes if we've got a security problem.
No, we have to have someone in our control room down. We have staff tonight at home and also, but we always have to have someone down in the control room because remember, we are live streaming this also.
Well, what I'm suggesting is we did this on Zoom. Couldn't we just all do this from home? I mean, my wife does this, all the time with her meetings for her church, and everybody does it from home. Nobody's at the church punching buttons or anything. I don't understand why this has to be done at headquarters. And I don't understand what the security problem is. People are doing this all over the country on Zoom.
But Dick, take an example for your wife. Everyone that's on that Zoom call have been invited. They didn't post it on a poster board and say, the world, come to this meeting. They have been invited. And that's what I'm talking about. As I said, I don't have a problem how many people are on these meetings as long as they are invited.
Well, everybody who is residing, all our residents have a right to attend these meetings. They don't need an invitation. They can walk in they ought to be able to walk in just like we were meeting at the headquarters building. It should be open to the public. And if they have to get invitations, it's not open to the public.
But Dick, you're not comparing apples and apples. We are dealing with circumstances. This is technology. This is a video. We can have people, I know you've heard of bad actors in coming into a program. And that's what my concern is about. This technology, this Google is tied to our internet, to our IT system, to our internet and everything. That's my only concern. But
I'm saying disconnected from all of that.
No, let's end this. If the board says Milton on the work session on the 8th of October, just the same number that we send give to the boards for invitation to this, you put it on our website, then we'll do it and we'll take our chances. My only concern is that I just have a concern about that. That's, to me, is almost like opening the door and telling anyone to come in. Everyone heard about, look what happened in Baltimore City. Look what happened all these other, where they just took over your system and all of a sudden we're being held hostage. That's not like walking through the door where someone start acting out, we can call the police. That's not the same. But would you please just tell me what you want to do?
Well, I've stated what I want to do. I want to make this as accessible to our residents as possible. That's what I want to do. And I don't think that the security issue is what you're seeing. I think if we went to another platform and did this from our homes, I don't see the security issue.
Andy, what does the board want to do?
Well, I mean, Renee wants to talk and then I'll say something. Renee?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that we move the meetings to a Zoom platform and that the phone number or login be put on the CA website.
All right, give me a chance to.
Second.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Said Alan was in first. I'm sorry, Alan. I thought you were just commenting. All right, Alan.
Well, first of all, I'll second Renee's motion. I think I get the question of the security concerns. I want to make sure people are understanding Dick's point is that if we're all at home and this is done over Zoom, then there's no connection to the CA internet, intranet or website or anything. So it's the worst is somebody will show their private parts on camera and we turn off their camera.
That make the meeting more exciting.
Okay, if you're telling me,
I believe I've got the floor now.
Okay.
I get the point that there are bots out there that collect things, and we could put it behind a button. We could put a CAPTCHA thing on it. I'm not a robot kind of thing. So I agree that people shouldn't have to go to a bunch of different screens. It could be right on our agenda page. Click here if you'd like to attend, and you'll either receive the invitation or they'll get the login information will be right there. That'd be pretty easy to do. So I think it would address the security concerns.
Okay, and then Renee?
I
Anything
just
else?
made the motion. I'm good.
Okay. So regardless of actually which platform we use, I mean, whether it's Zoom or Google or Microsoft or whatever, there's still the issue of, do you require someone to, as Alan said, or as Milton said, make a request, okay, to actually join? I can tell you that in Owen Brown, we do. I think we've used WebEx and we've used Zoom. And as part of our agenda, it says if you wish to participate, please contact the village manager, and then we give you the link. And we do that, and I know a number of other villages do the same thing. It's not, so in essence, you can come, but you have to indicate you have an interest in coming. And so regardless of the platform, I think that issue is still there, because even with Zoom, Dick was talking, you invite people. So whether you're not, you still have the problem. Do you put the invite out for the entire world, or do you actually have people ask, as either Milton or Alan has said? And I haven't really heard a lot of discussion about that. What I've heard is Zoom versus Google. But truly, Google and Zoom have very similar capabilities. We're a Google shop. I don't see a real problem with using Google Meets. You can still do the same thing you want. You can ask to join the meeting, or you can put the button out, as Alan said, even if you use Google. So independent of whatever platform you want. We got two issues here. One is the platform to use, and two is how to have people, access the link. Dick's comment, outside of the IT person, communications person who is running the live stream, nobody has to be in CA headquarters. In fact, a number of our folks are actually at home. So most of, the CA staff can be at headquarters if they choose to be, but they can also be at home. It's not because you're using Google that they have to be there. But the streaming service does work with Google because that's part of our network. And we're a Google shop, whether we like it or not. Years ago, we decided, we're Google. Everything we do is Google. And I just think we should stay with Google. We can still provide the link that people have been talking about. But I don't see the reason to change. We're a Google shop, and we might as well just stay with Google. All our files are on Google. Everything's on Google. Okay, Janet.
I would like to encourage the board to work with what we have. I think I'm on board with opening up the meeting. We have the option of removing people from a Google platform, but this is what's already established. There are costs associated with not just getting a Zoom account, but then making sure that whatever needs to happen for live streaming happens in conjunction with that. We have a platform, it supports 100 people. If we get more than 100 residents, let's reevaluate at that point. But I really, when have we ever had 100 people in the boardroom? It's maybe 50, maybe 75, on a really big night, but the reality is we just don't get that many. And so while it's possible online we may get more, why don't we cross that bridge when we come to it? I think we have spent so much time on this topic at this point. Let's make a decision and move on, please.
Okay, looks like Alan, and then Renee, and then Shari.
I thought I labeled it as a comment, but I just want to let
Oh,
people
I'm
know.
sorry.
Given that I've solved or I didn't solve, Janet pointed me towards solving the number of people on screen question. I'm okay staying with this platform. I just want us to have the link be available to our residents easily, and it should be like right up to meeting time. I don't like this 24 hours in advance.
Right.
Business should be just right on the website.
Renee?
I'm okay with staying with Google as long as we can be more flexible on the website as far as people being able to hop on.
Shari?
I agree with that point also. In terms of how we've handled our meetings, we should be able to handle our meetings in the same way that we handled it in the boardroom. We never stopped anyone from coming in. We never asked anyone to prove that they were a resident. We have always heard from people who came, and we had a list of people who wanted to speak. So I'm fine following all of those same things as long as we don't throw up artificial barriers to people coming in and creating extra steps for people to do. And our village lets anyone in. Thank you.
Jenny? And then
Yeah,
Greg.
I second what Cherry and Janet have been saying, and let's move on and not have this subject every board meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Dick?
I just want to say I'll back off, provided we make it easier for people to come to the meetings and we promote it. We need to promote it and we need to make it easy. And then I don't care what platform we're on.
All right. So what I'm hearing from the board is make it easier for people to find, to access the meeting, and it's okay to stay with Google. Is that right?
Yes.
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 All right. Milton, does that satisfy you?
I basically all I said at this point. I just want to know what the board wants to do.
Well, now you know.
Do you now know?
I will. Yes, Alan, I know.
Great.
I will
Thank you.
basically, as I said, if everything is a risk and if we want to do this, we will do that.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
good.
would love to see how many more people join our board meetings. That would be interesting to see.
Okay.
I think when we get to the budget process, we'll have a lot more joining.
All right.
Yes.
Chairman's remarks.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Milton, you said that I think it was you who said that our contract is for fewer numbers of people at one time. Could we up that contract if we so chose?
No, we would have to buy another. It would be an expensive proposition. We have to buy another. I think it would. What I'm told, we have to buy another suite of Google. Remember, we went to this Google Meet because of the pandemic, and when we first purchased it, it gave us up to 250 participants. But it had a timeline up until September. Then it would go back to 100.
Got it. And we don't know what the cost to upgrade to a higher would be.
I would have to check with. I would have to check with Chuck and see what the cost involved would be.
Thank you.
Okay. Chairman's remarks, written report. Any questions? Okay. President's remarks. President's report. Any questions for Milton? Okay. Inter Arbor Trust report. Any questions for Lynn? No. Okay.
One question. Lynn,
Jenny?
yeah, well, actually for Lynn, I guess, and Janet, I'm sorry, that last path is moving ahead, it looks like this county path?
The county path, it's not, we don't know exactly when it's going to start, but we are hopeful that it'll be ready, hopefully for a spring, season, both the path and the park.
Any other questions? Okay. Financial reports.
Andy, Dick had a question.
I'm sorry, what?
Dick had a question.
Oh, Dick had a question. I'm sorry. Dick?
Sorry, I should have said something. I just wanted to say I've been over to the park recently, and they do have that path. It's all gravel at this point, but it's a beautiful path. It really does bring people, draw people into the park. I recommend everybody take a look at it.
It's going to be great.
Okay, anything else? All right, financial reports, audit committee. The financial reports were reported to the audit committee. Audit committee members, anything you want to tell the board? I know you all voted to send them to the board. Anything, any comments?
Well, I'll just say that it was unanimous on every single issue there. Everybody was happy with what they saw and voted to send it to the board.
Janet, Renee, anything you want to add?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Renee?
So I just have a question. I'm looking at the sports and fitness budget, and I can't quite figure out where the indoor pools are budgeted in sports and fitness. These at the Columbia Gym, the Supreme Sports Club, the Athletic Club, and the Haven.
Could you give us a page reference so we know what you're
I'm on page 21, 20, whatever, 20, 21, 22, 23.
The pools are in the fitness club budget.
They're pardon?
The indoor pools are part of the fitness club budget. And the
Okay, all right. So then
they're a department within the individual facilities.
they're logged in with the gyms, each individual gym. Okay, all right. So then I guess my question is, if I go to the estimated budget for the outdoor pools this year, and they've been closed all year, how do we have $500,000 in salaries?
Because aquatics administrative is in there. Well, one, we had prepared to open the pool, so until the board voted on the second budget to not open the pools, there was a lot of work being done to open at least, I believe, if I remember, it was 8 or 9 pools. So there was work done in May and June. But the aquatics administrative will oversee all of the indoor pools, the hiring, the staffing, is all lumped into outdoor pools.
So all of the overhead goes to the outdoor pools?
Yes.
Even though, okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
Okay, any other questions? All right. If not, I do want to thank staff for producing the first quarter financial reports. You know, as Susan has said before, probably our best quarter.
Randy, can I make one clarification?
Sure.
So not all of the overhead for the indoor pools goes to the aquatics administration. The actual pool supervisors, from the pool supervisor down through, are all allocated and paid for by the indoor fitness facility.
So then I guess my next question is, how do you get to the salary figure on the swim center? Because it's pretty high.
The salary at the swim center is high because that's where Clippers are located.
The Clippers are at the swim center.
Correct. So you have the entire Clippers staff allocated to the swim center because that's home based.
Okay, so can we get a figure then for what the Clippers personnel expense, including payroll and benefits, is? Because I'm not sure that, you don't have to give it to me now, you can email it to us later.
Could I ask, as part of that, is therefore income to the swim center also augmented by the fact that the Clippers are there?
That's the next one.
Yes.
So is there a separate, before we get this budget, is there a separate sub-account for the Clippers?
It's within the swim center budget, yes. Just like within the fitness facilities, Kids Space has its own account, personal training has its own account, aquatics has its own budget center. Within the swim center, the Clippers have their own budget center.
Okay, so could we see what you've budgeted for the Clippers for the year? Are they making a profit, or are they breaking even, or what's?
Clippers, it's somewhere around 0, trending negative.
And does that include taking into account the swim lane cost against the residents? So the residents can't use the swim lanes when the clippers are in the water?
No, we don't budget for opportunity cost.
Okay.
And that's not a cash or even, that's not a budget.
I'm not saying it's a cash item. I'm saying that if we have residents that want to go to the pool and they can't use the lanes, that's fine, just so I understand.
All right,
Andy, a follow-up on Renee's question real quick. So
Jenny?
Dan, that actually means then that the Supreme Sports Club has a revenue loss in terms of the Clippers, right?
Right.
Because they
what?
were a revenue loss.
Yes.
That could be significant for
But
the
we've,
Supreme Sports Club.
all the Clippers money went to the swim center.
Right, it's an opportunity
Now
loss, Jim.
it does, but last year they were paying the Supreme Sports Club, weren't they?
Yeah.
Even though they were there?
Yeah, they were just always using, they were always paying the swim center.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird.
Okay, let's get a little too deep here. If you have, we can carry that conversation on, through emails or that. Tracking forms. Resident, any questions? Okay. Proposed new topics, anything? Talking points. Well, we unfortunately did not have Bonnie able to give us the talking points, so I'm going to have to do a real quick summary for you. We approved the operating parameter as submitted by staff, approved the capital parameter, the keeping the annual charge in cap. We approved proposal number 1 under membership guidance. We approved the reserve fund recommendations. We approved the commercial e-scooters new policy, and we approved the private policy.
And we survived the great Google blackout of 2020.
Yeah. So I think that's it. So I want to thank everyone for putting up with all the problems we had tonight, and have a great weekend. And hearing no objection, we're adjourned.
Hey, Andy, one thing just before we end, I just sent out a survey for our values discussion. So if everybody could please fill it out. It's also going to be asking you for additional questions that I can do in a follow-up survey because I did it quick. So anyway, please take a look. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. That's Saturday from 9 to 1,
The
October
10th, I think.
Yeah, I'll send out all the details. Please just take the survey.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you. We're adjourned.